Laura, you want to go ahead and start recording? Hi, everyone. So this is our publishing hot seat. And today we're talking with Susan Sandler, who is a longtime client, student, and dear friend of mine who has questions about publishing path. And if you have questions afterward, I'm happy to answer them. I ask that you mute yourself, so it's just Susan and AJ having a conversation. So how the hot seat works is Susan hits me up with all of her questions and I answer them on the fly. That's how that works. So Susan Sandler, you wanted to talk about publishing path. What are your big questions?
Well, I have an assumption that I want to test with you.
Oh.
That my two options are really self-publishing or hybrid. And because I don't have the background to even think about a traditional publisher, nor do I need to, in my not so humble opinion. So I'm wondering which of those two paths would be better for me and how I make that decision. So that's really the bigger question.
Okay, so just so everybody here understands, a self-publishing, that's an obvious choice. You're doing it yourself. There's two ways to do that, though. There's the DIY way, meaning you are going to put together your entire team. And there's the self-publishing package way, which means you hire a company that becomes your team. Most people confuse that with hybrid publishing or even just traditional publishing, but it's not. Because if you are paying for publishing, then that is self or hybrid. It is not traditional trade publishing. Hybrid, traditional publishing is can be a small press, can be a mid-tier press, can be a big five press like Random House, or rather Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, etc. The hybrid model is a combination of both, meaning that a hybrid, a true hybrid that adheres to the standards of hybrid, follows traditional publishing methods, systems, has robust distribution, strict editorial standards, etc. And you also invest in that, meaning you do put money in. So, that's the difference. I want to just make sure everybody is clear on those different models. And I'm actually going to let a couple people in right now. Okay. So first, let me just challenge you. Why do you think that going for a trade deal is off the table for you?
Anecdotally, when I talk with people who are more established authors, at least they've had one other book, they've had trouble getting deals. And part of that is that they didn't have as good a following, an established following, and I don't have a big following either. And I've never written a book. So I'm just presuming that I certainly could pursue it, but I don't know that's the best choice.
Sure. It might not be. It depends on what you value and what your resources are, what's most important to you. I will say this, if you have time on your hands, so time is a major factor. So if you're trying to get your book done within a specific time frame, trying to get a book deal is not going to be your best option, because the process of submitting to an agent and then that agent submitting to a publisher and then that editor getting approval from the publisher and then their whole entire long lead time can be a long process, can sometimes be a couple of years. So if time is a factor, then you want to take that off the table. That said, if it's not, there's nothing hurting in trying to pursue it, especially if you are reaching out to some people who have agents and they can maybe refer you. You can cut some of the time down that way. There's certainly merit there. It's not just about following. It is also about the book idea, and it's also about the main things that publishers are looking for. They want to know you can sell books, and they know what moves books. It's not a giant Twitter following. It's if your regular engagement with people, they know speaking moves books, they know podcasting moves books. So, if you have a lot of that going on, they might actually consider you, even though you have a smaller following. Also, if you have a lot of friends in high places who have influential followings and they are able to and commit to helping you promote the book, that also helps. So I wouldn't necessarily take it off the table. However, if you say want to get your book done and out next year, time's a wasting if that's an option for you. Let me ask you, what are the main factors for you, consideration?
I think one is pragmatics. This is a good question. So it's not necessarily how fast I can do it. Although I'm going to be 67 this month, so I'd like to do it before I'm dead. And not that I'm planning anything specific. And I guess the other thing is that I really want to use this as a mechanism for my own personal growth. I mean, that's the only reason I'm doing this book. It's the only reason that I almost do anything. And so one of the questions I ask myself is, what would be most helpful for me in terms of upping the ante on myself?
Okay.
So for example, the fact that I have this book, if it means that I really need to promote myself more, which would be a really good thing for me to do, not for fame and fortune, believe me, but more because I have a tendency to hold myself back because of old messages in my head. And since that's my message, not to allow yourself to let fear to drive your bus, I think it's important for me to use this to actually accelerate my own personal growth.
Okay. So if the acceleration, though, is in the form of promotion, any path you choose is the same.
Okay.
Any path you choose, you still are doing massive amounts of promotion. So there's no option that is going to make that easier for you.
Okay. So that's good to know. How about cost, AJ?
Sure. So the trade publishing, that's zero cost. Okay. Mm-hmm. Unless you're paying somebody to help you develop a book proposal or something, which is something I teach in workshop. So, if you're in workshop, you don't need to do that for sure. The hybrid model, you could be paying anywhere from $5,000 to, $35,000. It just really depends on if they are including developmental edit in that process, which they should be, and you want them to, because it's important, it's necessary, it's a vital component of the publishing process. So, realistically, you're looking at least $25,000. And to be clear,
could I stop you for a second and ask you a sub question? Since you are my development editor, does that make a difference?
So they're still going to give you an editor. I mean, you could beg off. You could say, I don't actually want that. But the best hybrids are trying to maintain some sense of editorial control. I do know that at least one hybrid that I work with will reduce the fee if you're already working with me. So that's an option. But it never hurts to have another perspective, And besides which, if you give them a really great manuscript going in, then they can do a lot of amazing things, I'm certainly not, the be all end all. So yes, you could absolutely, since you're already working with me and you're also my private client, so that's a little bit different. I think you could definitely go with a hybrid and say, I have the developmental edit covered.
Got it.
And then you could probably take off a big chunk of change.
Okay, so that's useful to know.
And there's another hybrid that I think might be good for you, where you could maybe take that part off. She writes.
Yes, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And
My-
I think if I'm right, I could be wrong, but I think they have a package that does not include it.
Okay.
So something to think about. And as far as self-publishing goes, again, the big cost there is the developmental edit. So, that is, I mean, I'm on the high end. I charge at least 35 grand just for that.
Mm-hmm.
But in my class, my students get that developmental edit support for 14 weeks. And my students get that support in developmental editing retreats. So it's a great way to save and get that feedback within workshop and community. But you can definitely find developmental editors for less. I would be suspect if somebody was charging you less than 10 grand for that, because it's a really big job. And not only time-wise, but you want someone who's a real veteran who really understands how to do it. It's not about dotting I's and crossing T's. It's not about grammar. It's about, does this book work to the best of can you realize this vision for the book? Is it reaching its full potential? Is it in true service of your reader? Is this a book that's actually going to change lives? That's the work of the developmental editor. It's really big stuff. So that's the biggest expense. You have that covered already,
Right.
because you've been my private client for years. The rest of it, you could knock out, save for printing costs. So let's just take that. There's a reason I take that just to get your book to market. You can easily do it for, say, $3,000 to $5,000.
Wow.
So that's a huge difference. And that's even with using really good people.
Oh, that's
so there are people who can do it for less, but you really need good people.
Yeah.
So then there's the printing cost. So you've learned in class that you have two kinds of printing: offset printing, which are larger print runs of at least 2,000 copies, and print on demand, which can literally be one copy printed on demand. So your investment is almost nothing if you choose print on demand. But if you wanted to do a print run, add that cost. So depending on how many copies you would want, say you wanted 5,000 copies, based on what I know of your outline, you're probably looking at $2 a book.
Okay.
So that would be an additional expense, but you wouldn't have to do it. You could also just do print on demand and even do an offset run later if it starts to build demand. And you say, so we had a student, John Briggs, who released in January, who started with print on demand, and then he had so many orders that, I mean, he blew through 1,000 in the first couple weeks. And so he said, I need to get a print run, because you can save 50% to say 65% just on the per unit cost if you are doing an offset run. So he did print on demand and then an offset run. So I'm just saying that the 3 to 5 will get your book to market, and then you can decide about printing based on demand.
That is great. I didn't realize that from an investment perspective, it wasn't as much as I even anticipated. Now, do I need a publicist though?
Okay, well, that doesn't include marketing. Okay, so
yeah, so that's the number that I'm wondering.
Well, that's could be, that's like taffy. I mean, that could be, stretch it all the way out here, or you could just have this little tiny bit. You don't need a publicist unless your goal is that you want to be in mainstream media. And in that case, you need somebody who absolutely has the connections. It does not matter if someone knows how to write a press release. Nobody reads them anymore. It's about if that person has connections. I would put that low on the list. High on the list, this is my high recommend. I think Amber Vilhauer's bestseller blueprint, bestseller book launch blueprint, I might have it backwards, but Amber Vilhauer's program is the best. And then partner that with a virtual assistant, because
Yep.
her program teaches virtual assistants how to support you in the launch as well. So I would put those two things together as really, that will honestly will put you in the top 10% of authors in terms of how much are you doing to support your book. Most people are doing this much to support their book, and they need to be doing this much to support their book. But that program makes it easier. So I would invest in those two things. And then I would have a budget, graphics budget, you know, a couple grand or something, just, you know, to support all the different assets you might need, such as banners, marketing graphics, etc.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can have a tiny budget for marketing, or you can have a huge budget for marketing, but it's your budget. It's not going to change depending on which path you choose.
This is so helpful. That is very clarifying.
Good. So what do you think you want to
do? Maybe self-publish.
Okay. So then you want to be careful about self-publishing packages when you do that. There are a lot of companies that are, some of them are great and some of them are not great. Little hidden things that you might not be aware of. Make sure you own your ISBN. Make sure that when they say that they're making it available for sale, that they're not just putting it on Amazon. This is one of my big pet peeves. It still happens. Yes, Amazon is the 800-pound gorilla. They have most of the book sales. However, they don't have all of the book sales. A lot of libraries can't order from Amazon. Individual independent bookstores don't order from Amazon. Barnes & Noble doesn't order from Amazon. There's other procurements that can't order from Amazon. So you need to be connected into the Ingram distribution network. They're the largest distributor in the world. And it's pretty easy to do. You just make your book available on Ingram Spark. But when you speak to a self-publishing package company, you want to understand how they are actually making your book available for sale. And
so I understand that if you are doing self-publishing, you have to do it through a package. Is that right?
No, I'm just cautioning you.
Gotcha. Okay.
You don't. And I find that a lot of self-publishers overcharge for things. Okay. So they'll overcharge for copy edits, but they're paying someone a pittance, and you're not getting a great copy edit back. So if anybody needs a referral, I know some of the best copy editors around. Okay. You really need to vet your editors, because I have seen some bad stuff come back. Self-publishing packages usually don't have one set team. They're usually outsourcing a lot of that work on Upwork or other places. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not, you know? So I would just double check, and I certainly would not let them charge you for a bunch of stuff that's unnecessary. So it takes, I go over all of that in class about how to vet them. But I've yet to find a self-publishing company that, well, there was one that was okay, but most of the time I think they're overcharging for things that are kind of common sense.
So can so here's a follow-up question. So if I was working, let's just say with Amber, okay, I don't know. I mean, I'm considering she writes. I know they have as a hybrid. Let's just look at the hybrid side. So she writes, I know, is very good. And Page 2, right?
Yep, I love Page 2.
And I understand that they have a limitation on how many authors, both of them, they'll take on in any given period of time.
Correct.
Those are the only two hybrids that I would even trust at this point that I've even heard about that have a track record.
Right. There are more. Mike McAllowitz was looking into it, and he was just speaking with a bunch of really successful authors at a retreat. and I have not vetted it. So just be clear, I personally have not vetted this company, but it was recommended a hybrid called Forefront.
Mm-hmm.
So you could check them out. But you can also do it on your own. You know, it just depends on how much, it just depends how much you really want to deal with, honestly, you know, in terms of handling stuff, you know?
I'd like to handle as little as possible.
Right. Well, if you want to handle as little as possible, then you need a self-publishing package, a hybrid company, or a trade publisher.
Okay. All right. I mean, it seems to me that maybe, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe my first I would investigate hybrids.
Well, the benefit of a hybrid is this: you as a self-published author can get distribution worldwide. By distribution, I mean wholesale distribution, okay? Not trade. Wholesale distribution means that they're basically, think of it like this: wholesale distribution, they're making your book available and fulfilling the orders. They are not out there pushing your book. They are not out there supporting your book, trying to see if it can get on shelves, trying to find opportunities for you in that respect. That's trade distribution. That's a next level. That's a higher tier. Hybrid does have that option, and they have wholesale distribution, both, depending on what you're doing. So there is merit in trying to get a hybrid deal, which again, by deal, you are investing in it, but it means that they are trying to get your book onto shelves. They are working with you to try and get it sold, versus just processing orders. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yes.
You can still, listen, Ingram Spark, $49. Sometimes there's a coupon to make it free. You can sell in more than 95 countries with print on demand. Easy peasy. You could do it tomorrow if you had your files ready. So there are options. But that means you're creating the demand. Do you understand?
Yes, I am understanding better.
Yeah. Now, let's be clear. You're still creating demand. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference. So trade distribution involves a sales team. The sales team is going and pitching to Barnes & Noble, to indie bookstores, to book clubs, to places like library guilds that buy bulk buy. They are pitching to big box stores like Target, Walmart, Costco. That's what a sales team does. Once your book is published, they're generally moving on, although they're still interested in what's called backlist, which means a title that is already published. They are really focused on front list. And so that's why they have such a long lead time between when you sign a deal and when your book actually comes out. They're all prepping for that stuff. So I'll give you an example. I have a book coming out next year, and they are currently working on all of the information for the sales team right now to give them as soon as possible. And it will be out in about 10 to 12 months, and they're already doing it. So that is a very early process.
Gotcha.
So there's merit in it because it gives you an expanded opportunities, but you might not want it. Plenty of people don't want it. They'd rather just have print on demand. And I will also tell you that I have clients who have done it on their own and sold thousands and thousands of copies. So yeah. Any other questions about that?
This might be an unfair question to ask in a public forum. So of course I'm going to ask it.
We're all just at home.
Knowing me the way you do.
Yeah.
Which would you recommend?
I think you would like hybrid or a self-publishing package. But I think you would like the control of the self-publishing, because you are a person who wants to keep to the schedule that makes sense for you.
Oh, gotcha.
you're very open and warm and adventurous soul, but you also like, this is the order I want to see things in.
That's true.
It's true. Yeah. So hybrid would be good, but you would also be stuck to that schedule.
Gotcha. Oh, that is a consideration.
They can't veer off that schedule. Once the train left the building, the train left the building. So once they list the book,
got you.
You're off to the races. I mean, it's not that they can't pull a book. Publishers pull books all the time. It's just not a good thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That is so helpful. You gave me more than I even thought would be possible.
So if you have no further questions, I'll open it up to other people who might have publishing path questions. Good. That's good. Terrific. Thank you and I do want to say before we move on to the next question that I'm so excited because our next session of Top 3 Book Workshop starts Monday. And we have plenty of slots, guys, because listen, these are weird times. So where I would normally have about 10 students, I only have a small number of students. This is actually a good thing. It allows for more time for each person. It probably won't happen again. And I am moving forward. I was given the advice, maybe you should postpone. But I do have 3 people in my class who want to get their books done. So we soldier on. It's a small group, but we soldier on. But if you would like to get started on your book, my 14-week class starts Monday. Susan is in my class. I think I have some other students. Oh yeah, Andrani's here and Mary's here. And the other thing I've done because of this current crisis we're in, because I know there's a lot of financial uncertainty, is extend the payment plan so that if people need 4 months, 8 months, even 12 months, I will accommodate it. I just want to help people get their book done. I'm not offering this class again until the fall, and I already have signups for that. So this is this weird kind of perfect window to sign up for class because it's going to be a small group. And I will also point out that we have alums who come back to class, and that's something that I offer to everybody. So even if you don't finish in this 14 weeks, even if miracle happens and we all can see each other again and go back to work. Sorry, I just got a little emotional there just thinking about that. You can still participate in the fall class once you're an alum. The details of that, if you want to talk to me one-on-one, you can book a 20-minute call with me this week, and I would love to talk to you about it. So now I'll go ahead and open up to questions from anybody else who's here. Feel free to put in the chat or raise your hand. No one has a publishing question? Okay.
I think you were so thorough in your response to Susan that everybody is just now, their brain is spinning and working on what their publishing path could possibly be.
Sure. I'm happy to take in if anybody has any other type of question. We do have a couple minutes. If you have a creative question. Oh my gosh, Sherry's here. Hi, Sherry. I didn't see Sherry when I was just talking with Susan. Nice to see you.
This was a good one.
Yeah. All right. Well, so Rachel, I had a call for the last 10 that I had to take, so I hope I didn't miss this, but I just finalized my book proposal and shopping for an agent. Any advice? Yes, I do have advice for that. First of all, contact the authors you know to ask if they would recommend their agent. Put out a call on social media, in private groups on Facebook, or boldly go right onto your main Facebook and ask if anybody has an agent that they could recommend. 2 reasons. One, it'll get that agent to pay attention to you because they're referring. If they get a referral, they're more likely to open up a submission. Number 2, you want referrals from people who love their agent. so that you can potentially have a good relationship with them. That would be my big advice about that. Sherry, you can absolutely have a 20-minute call. Laura's going to give you a link in the chat so you can set that up. Sam, what did you want to hear more about?
You answered it. I just wanted to hear more about that because I'm gonna have to. You mentioned that a traditional deal would be the best for me, and so I was just wondering how to do work on the agent thing.
The most important thing to remember for an agent is that you have your proposal done and ready to go, buttoned up. It's so pretty. You love it so much. So that when you do meet someone who has an agent, or you meet an agent at an event or on a virtual networking something or whatever you're doing, then they say, well, do you have a proposal? You can say, yes, I do. Let me send that to you immediately. You never want to be in a situation where an agent asks you for the proposal. That's a hot moment for you. And then you have to say, yeah, I'll get that to you. And then you have to hurry home and write it, because it can take months to get it right. It can also take less time to get it right, but it can take months. Anyone else with a question around publishing? Gail? Hi, Gail.
Hello. It sounded a little bit like your perspective on social media, because you mentioned traditional, and I guess now, full disclosure, I do work in marketing and I work in PR, and right now I've been extremely busy around crisis communications because there's such a demand and people are hungry for more information, but almost curated, right? So I guess my question is around the value that could be used from a marketing perspective in getting someone on the radar before their book comes out and using social media to put them in that spotlight prior to their book. What your thoughts are on?
You mean the author?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, author, you should be marketing your book the second you start thinking about writing it.
Right.
And how you do that is you start showing up. You just start showing up in the places where your readers hang out. You have to be clear about who your reader is. You have to be clear about where they're consuming content. And then you need to show up in that place where they're consuming content on the topics and messaging that will be in your book. And you need to establish a consistent presence over time.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Start right away.
So that's helpful, because I know you said, and I agree 100%, it's not about how many followers you have, it's about what does that engagement look like? Because I do know recently, the more that I've been, and I know this at one level, but now that I'm doing it, is the more that I've stuck my neck out on some advocacy issues around crisis communications, I've now been invited on a Twitter chat. I'm invited on Facebook Live. So it happened when I actually went from being more like a little bit more middle of the road and actually leaned into it was an issue too that I had concerns about, that if I kind of stepped out into that world. So, but now I guess it's about having the right people engaged. So.
Yeah, I mean, number of followers is a factor. I'm not trying to downplay it. I just think people wait too long to submit their proposals.
Yeah.
Because they think they need another 2,000 followers or another 10,000 people on their email list. Email list is huge. Podcasting is huge. Speaking is huge. It doesn't, and publishers don't care if you're getting paid for speaking. They care that you're speaking. Mm-hmm. So, just get out there. Just get out there and do it. Obviously, if you have 1 million people on YouTube, getting a publishing deal isn't going to be that hard. If you have a good idea. Yeah. So the idea does still matter, guys. It does still matter.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question?
And I just want to point out that in chat, I put a link to scheduling a 20-minute call if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the workshop that starts next Monday. And you can email me at laura@ajharper.com if you need help getting any of that organized. So you can talk with AJ, pick her brain.
And Laura, when is our next hot seat?
Our next hot seat is Thursday this week. It is at 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock Eastern, same location.
Okay, great. All right, well, I hope everybody learned a lot today. Thank you, Susan, for participating. And I'll see you all Thursday. Stay healthy.